Assalamu alaikum everyone. uh, I hope you are doing well. So we have discussed some important topics regarding international business. uh, Last week I think we have discussed in another class or case study regarding Siemens, whatever fraud they were doing in other countries. So we have come to another topic, which is subsidies. I think we have discussed tariffs, different forms of tariffs, and all different types of tariffs as well. So now we will discuss subsidies. In most of the developing countries, government were supporting local manufacturers, local company, in order to support domestic companies and increase number of export and decrease number of imports. So in order to stand on their feet and depend on their national products, so that's why governments are supporting companies. So in Japan and other countries, they have spent a lot of money on supporting local businesses, domestic businesses, steel companies, other type of companies as well. So there are many different various or different advantages of supporting local companies. They can give strong position for domestic companies. They can help to reduce number of imports. It helps to increase export. It helps to standard of living, that people will produce, companies will produce a good quality product at lower price. So there are many other advantages of supporting local companies as well. So a subsidy is a government payment to a domestic producer. Subsidies take many forms, including cash grant, low interest loan, tax break, and government equity participation in domestic firms. So it can be in different forms, it can be in different types. Subsidies can be a cash grants. For example, recently UK government, United Kingdom government have given subsidies of £25,000 for each shops because of COVID-19. So that is a subsidy from the government for the local domestic businesses. So it can be giving cash, $50,000, $10,000, $20,000 based on research and surveys. So it depends on countries, on their policies, how they support their local companies. They might support them with cash, giving them cash. For example, if you want to invest in pharmaceutical company in Afghanistan, government, for example, if government say that if you invest in pharmaceutical company, we will give you 50,000, for example, cash as a subsidy, or we will give you $100,000 as a cash, or 10,000 or 20,000. It can be in different forms as well. It can be the government might give you land, free land, like for Alakosa. I think they have given them a cheaper price, or I don't know, maybe free. So that's why it can be free land, it can be free electricity, it can be free services, it can be anything. So it depends on the government availability of resources, how much resources they are having, how much they need to pay, how much money they need to pay, why they should choose this type of subsidies, what's the reason behind giving subsidies to the local producers. Should they give or not, to whom, which companies they need to give. So it depends on policies and procedures, rules and regulation of the government. If the government decided that they will give 20,000, for example, in United Kingdom, as I have stated before, in United Kingdom the government has given around 25,000 pound for each and every shop. So they might give more money for big businesses. They might give them money based on size of the business. They might give them money based on their market share, or whatever they are having position. They will help them in order to survive in this hard situation. Because if companies are closing, companies are losing, they failed, so it will have different negative impact on the society as well. For example, if Alakozes, because of financial crisis or because of any problem in Afghanistan or because of COVID-19, if the company, schools or many schools have been closed, many schools have been closed because they couldn't support their lecturers, teachers, they couldn't give rent, whatever. So imagine if 10 people are working in a single school, so all of them will lose their job. So that's why it's very hard. It has different minus impact as well. If there is a production of, let's say, Pepsi Cola, or there is a production of Alakosa, if it's closed, we might need to import, let's say, cola from another country. For example, if there is a production of steel, nowadays I think 50% steel are produced inside Afghanistan, around 50% or 60%. But imagine if Han Steel or Mahan, all of them close their company and leave Afghanistan. So what will happen? Again, we will be 100% dependent on our neighbors. So we will depend again on these countries, another countries. So it will increase number of our imports and decrease our export. So that's why it will be still a dependent country. So that's why government sometime regarding their policy, they help local businesses, small businesses to survive. They give them some subsidies in the form of cash payment. So the next, low interest loans. Yes, this is another type of subsidies that the government can help a local businessman or business women, so they can give them low interest loans, for example, or no interest. As we all know, interest is not permissible, but as far as banking, they might give even no interest loan. Let's say if the government provide no interest loan in agriculture for farmers, so they can plant more trees, they can make more gardens, they can have more machineries, they can harvest their crops with the latest technology, they can pack their products, vegetable, with latest technology, they can bring in new machineries. So if the government wants to help them, not in the form of cash, they can give them loans without any interest. Loan for 10 years, loan for 5 years, for 6 years. Why? Because in order to support local businessmen or farmers, or they can give loan to different sectors, not only agriculture, they can give loan to production sectors as well. They can give loan to companies, local domestic companies, so they can expand their production line, they can increase their capacity, they can recruit high talents, they can bring new technology. So the companies can use this loan on different occasions for different purposes. So they can use it for buying new machinery, they can use it for expansion, they can use for factory, they can use for producing new products, they can spend the money in innovation, they can spend money in research and development, they can spend money on different sectors, on different parts. So imagine that everything is, for example, if a company wants to build a factory, for example, what do we call it, let's say jewelry. Yes, if a businessman wants to open a company, he got, for example, $100,000, and he need loan for example, $200,000 more loan in order to have a company producing rings, bracelets, watches, and these things. So the government might, if the possibilities, in order to support local businesses, in order to produce and export these products to foreign countries, the government might give them a loan with low interest or with no interest for 5 years or 6 years or 10 years, whatever is the period. It depends on policies of the government. So in order to support our local production, for example, there is electricity, solars. If someone want to invest in the government, give them some loan. If a businessman have $500,000 and he need half a million or 300,000 or 200,000 more dollar in order to invest in energy sector, in order to invest in electricity, in order to invest in gas, in order to invest in some other sectors. So the government give them loan without interest or low interest compared to private banks. So in order to support local businessmen in local companies. So that's another form of what we call it subsidies that the governments are can use them in order to support their local and domestic products. So that's another. Next one, we have tax breaks. Yes, this is another type of subsidy the government can give to the local production, local companies. That's tax break. That means that they give a companies they, what we call it, they ask companies not to pay tax for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, whatever is the period. So what happened in order to support local? For example, now is because of COVID-19, Afghanistan government decided to tell all the companies, please don't pay tax, or pay 50% tax or 70% discount, in order to companies to survive these hard situations. So tax breaks, or if there is a subsidy from the government, if any businessman or businesswoman want to invest in electricity in energy sector, the government will give them tax break for 10 years, so they don't need to pay income tax for 10 years, for example. So why? In order to attract more foreign direct investments. So in order to attract investment from other countries, that oh yeah, there is no tax for 5 years, 6 years, and we are investing millions of dollars, and the tax might be millions. So it's a best opportunity, we can take it and go to these countries and invest. I think it was Japan or another country that they were giving subsidy cash free land and 30,000 or 50,000 grand of dollar to any company investing in few sectors that they had, steel or something other sectors. So if the government of Afghanistan decided to give free, for example, cash or low interest loan plus free land plus 5-year tax break, so in order to attract foreign direct investment, in order to attract foreign investors to come and invest in our country, once they come and invest here, definitely from one side that they are paying tax after 5 years or 6 years, they got free land, it will has a positive impact on our society by providing jobs, employment opportunities, helping local standard, so we can have electricity at cheaper price. So there are many advantages of this. So it depends on countries that they are investing, and depend on governments that which type of subsidies they want to give to their for example their companies or their investors. So it depends on different countries providing different types of subsidies for new investor or for foreign investors, so they can help to attract more foreign direct investment to their country and increase and develop their economy. Next one is government equity participation in domestic firms. I think you have discussed, you have studied equity finance and debt financing in financial management. So equity, the government can be a shareholder and in a company or in a sector. So in order to support that sector, the government are paying, want to be the owner, and they want to invest money as well. For example, when there was financial crisis hit Europe, many banks in London was near to collapse. They were planning to close because they couldn't survive. So what happened? Bank of Scotland and Lloyds Bank have been bought by the government. So 50% of the bank were bought by the government. Why? In order to save that sector, save these banks so they can at least stay in the market. So 50% of the banks were 50% of Lloyd banks and 100% Bank of Scotland were bought by the government. So that's the equity participation of government in businesses. We have Afghan Milli Bank, which is I think half private and half government. Pashtani Bank is again half I think private and half maybe government. So they have supported New Kabul Bank. You saw that New Kabul Bank crisis. Because of that, the government entered into the market and bought half of the bank, so the bank can survive in the market. So definitely these will have a negative impact on other banking sectors as a whole. So that's why the next type of subsidy is that the government can take shares, can participate in the business itself. So by lowering production cost, government participation in by lowering production cost, subsidies help domestic producer in two ways: competing against foreign imports. Yes, so if you don't support your local companies, they cannot compete in the market. They might face any problem, they might have issues, they might have low interest or whatever, they might have a low capacity skilled labor, so they cannot compete with international companies. For example, recently, because of electricity issues, many companies have demonstrated, businessmen, that we cannot compete in the market with the foreign companies. As foreign companies started flight Emirates, fly Dubai, Air India, these Carmier and local domestic companies have demonstrated that we cannot compete with them in the global market because they are the big players, so they have more opportunities. So in this time, the government can support local companies by giving them some tax break. For example, they can put, let's say, 10% tax on Comair and 20% tax on Emirates, Pakistan Airline, PIA and other airline. On foreign airlines, they can put 50%, 20-30% tax, and on local domestic companies, they can use 10% tax. So that's why they were having issues. So the government, what they are doing, they are investing money on domestic companies so they can compete with foreign imports and compete with foreign companies. So if they can't compete and they fail, so definitely we will be again dependent on other countries. So again, gaining export market. So if you support your local domestic companies, it's very, very easy for them to enter into another market, and it's very easy for them to expand their business to other countries, other markets. So because they will have some supports from the local government. So that's why that most of the time you listen, you hear in business news that businessmen in Afghanistan are they are complaining that we don't have facilities. For example, electricity, we don't have access to small amount of loans, we don't have access to no interest or low interest loans. So all these issues are security issues, we all know about these. So that's why still many companies are not willing to invest in Afghanistan, because there's the opportunities are very, very low compared to other countries, for example. So according to World Trade Organization, in mid-2000s, countries spent 300 billions on subsidies, 250 billion of which was spent by 21 developing countries. So imagine $300 billion were invested on subsidies, which is not a small amount, it's a very big amount. $250 by 21 developing countries. They have given subsidies in different form: tax breaks, low interest loan, government equities, cash grants. So it can be on different forms. So they have used this in order to support their local production, in order to support their local company. So many companies or countries have invested on on this sector, especially Japan. They have helped their local companies in steel industry, in electronics. So they were giving some sort of subsidies, so in order to support their local production. In IT sectors, in some countries they are giving subsidies for information technologies. In some countries they are giving subsidies for research and developments, anyone who is coming with something new products, with a new market. So it depends on different aspects as well. So that's another type of business, another type of support, so that the government can do that. uh, so you find these issues. So now, in response to serve sell slump following the global financial crisis between mid 2008 and mid 2009, some developed nations give 45 billion in subsidies to their automobile makers. So as we have discussed that in 2008 and 2009, around when financial crisis hit Europe, the government of those countries have helped their automobile industries that were producing cars. So when financial crisis hit Europe, no one were willing to buy a new car, latest car 2000, for example, 9 and 10. So most of the automobile industries have produced thousands and millions of cars, and all of them were parked in the parking. So no one were willing to buy a new car because they were suffering from financial crisis. So these companies were in very high risk. So in the types of industries, automobile industry has been hit a lot by financial crisis, because customers were not willing to buy new cars. They were just having their own old car, that's it, because no one were willing to take risk and buy new cars. So everyone was worried regarding their financial situation. So that's why the automobile industries has suffered big loss. So because of this, so thousands of people were working in that sectors. So the government, they didn't want it that these automobile industries close or shut their business or lose. So they give them around $45 billion in subsidies, so they can stand on their feet. That subsidies, as we have discussed earlier, these subsidies could have been cash grant, it could have been loan, it could have been tax break, it could have been different things. So I think in Corona as well, many developed nations have like what we call it, have given tax break to most of the companies, that you don't need to pay tax for 6 months or 3 months. You don't need to pay rent for 6 months, 3 months of because of quarantine, because of COVID-19. They have given the owners to give 3 months, 4 months discounts because of rent. So that's different subsidies they are supporting. They want to support their local businesses and local companies. So that's why you find that they could have been in hospitals, in different automobiles. So these government, their main purpose, while the purpose of the subsidy was to help them survive a very difficult economic climate. So it was difficult economic time, in most of these companies suffered a lot. So that's why the government give them subsidies, so they can survive the market. If not, for example, if you don't support them in hard situation, they will fail. Most of the company will fail. So what will happen? Most thousands of people will lose their job, because in each company, in each production site, thousands of people are working there. So it's very, very hard for them to survive in the market. If they lose jobs, thousands of people lose jobs, it will be again a problem for the government. So that's why they couldn't lose this, so they have helped their local productions. So that's why, whilst purpose of subsidy was to help them survive a very difficult economic climate, one of the consequences was to give subsidized companies an unfair competitive advantage in global auto industry. So they were planning to help their local companies to compete with the global markets. So they were planning that to support their local productions to compete with the other companies in the global market. So it's very high, because for example, if Toyota, they don't find any issue or anything, then there is a problem. So then there is a problem that these companies will be facing. For example, if Japan don't support their Japanese electronics, so if they fail, thousands of people will lose their jobs. So I think Japan was giving some sort of subsidies in few years before China, a big market, a big economy. They were supporting their local farmers to, for example, give crops. Like another subsidies in Afghanistan for agriculture, that they were giving them, government were giving them plants, trees, were giving them also solars, and also anyone who is not producing propane and what we call it, poppies in these things. So they were giving them some sort of subsidies so they can grow corn, they can grow some others, and they can make gardens or fruit farms or whatever. So different types of subsidies were given by the government. So these subsidies can be, as we have discussed earlier, that's the only reason is to support your local domestic product and local, so support the companies to compete in global market, to survive the hard time, and to not lose because if most of the companies, for example, if all schools stop operating in Kabul, they close, so what will happen? Thousands of people will lose jobs. So again there is an issue. So that's why you find that the governments are giving them different sort of subsidies in other countries, so they can at least survive and compete in the global market. India, again, they were given some subsidies. Bangladesh, developing countries, they were giving some sort of subsidies to farmers, businessmen, and different as well. So for example, different type that can be a citizenship or whatever. UAE, I think they have said anyone who get high GPA or whatever in some sectors, they give them some 10 years visas or family visas or whatever. So different forms, so they can the reasons is to attract top talents from the global countries, from other countries. They are trying to attract new talents. So that's all because of subsidies. So let me revise. So subsidies, we have discussed tariffs, that there are different forms of tariffs. So why governments are imposing tariffs, we have discussed some case. So subsidies, another way of government helping local companies, and it can be even for foreign companies as well, in the form of cash, in the form of other as well. So that's incentives, that call it, I think that's incentives. This subsidies is government payment to domestic producer. It can be in different forms. It can be in low interest loan, it can be tax break, it can be government equity participation. So as I have discussed in 30 minutes, this subsidies can take different forms. So it depends on the government which type of subsidies they have decided, why they have decided, to which sectors. For example, to automobile industry, how much, for food, for vegetable, for agriculture. So they will come up with something new idea with the new policy or the procedures. So how much we need to give, why we need to give, which sector we need to support, and why we need to support. So it comes through a big plan, so a proper plan. So after the proper plan, the committee or whatever, they are deciding to give subsidies for the local producers. So that's it. So in next class we'll talk about strategic plan as well, inshallah.